No worries. And good afternoon and welcome back. This is the third of 4 videos that we're doing today. I'm going to switch that off. I don't need that anymore. The third of 4 videos that we're doing today. This live event that we're having at the Hobbyman and Hearn's Hobbies. So welcome if you're watching online, either live or after the fact. It's good to have you here. So in a couple of the sessions we've done before this, we looked at preparing some models, cleaning models, and also we looked at masking, and we looked at some things around some painting techniques, pre-shading, light source painting, that kind of thing. I'll show you one of the light source painted pieces that we did. This was literally just a rock from my garden, which we painted up, and you can see there we've got some detail out of that. And I've got another one that I've primed. This is the regular side of it, and that's the prime side of it. Now we're going to be showing you off some skills known as washes and dry brushing. So these are techniques that are used to accentuate details in the models that we paint. A lot of model building, like I mentioned earlier on, is and painting models is around the use of contrast, so that details become more obvious, they pop out, shadows become a little bit deeper. Because you're looking at things on a much smaller scale, sometimes you need to accentuate those recesses and highlights so that they're obvious to the eye, and they draw you into the model and make it just look a little bit nicer. Here's a couple of miniatures that I haven't quite finished yet. BJ, can I have the other view, please? These are a couple of miniatures that I haven't quite finished yet that show this off quite nicely. We're able to zoom in at all, make that a little bit larger. These, as I said, are not finished, but these show you how something on a much smaller scale. There we go. I'll just put those. There we go, and we'll get that focus. There we go. So you can show that those are quite small, but you can see a lot of really cool detail in those. As I said, those are not finished yet, but even have a look at that shield there. You can see lots of little details in that, even though it's tiny. You can see compared to my fingernail at the background. It's no bigger than my fingernail, but you can see lots of tiny little details in that. And that's through use of washes and dry brushing. It just helps draw the eye to the model, makes it look very beautiful. So we're going to be showing that technique on a couple of things. These are the little resin skulls that I showed off earlier on. Again, really quite small. Yep, zoom in on that for me, please, BJ. There we go. You can see that resin skull there. It's just a tiny little resin skull that I cast from some Lego pieces. And I'm going to use a dry brushing technique in that. What I've done is I've primed that in black. So black is the color of our shadows and that kind of thing. And what I want to do is use those shadows and in the recesses, and use the dry brushing techniques to bring out the highlights of that. And I'm going to dry brush that using Tamiya Chrome Silver X11. I want to get my, I've left my pad over here. I use a pad like this to do a lot of my painting. So another trick that I use as well is sometimes when you're using various paints, doesn't matter what brand it is, sometimes what can happen is that the pigment can settle in the bottom of the jar and separate from the medium that holds the pigment. And what that means is that you really need to mix them quite thoroughly, and shaking them is a really good idea, but sometimes it doesn't do all the job and you need to stir it. As a modeler who makes plenty of models, what you end up having is lots of sprue pieces left over. So sprues like this one here. You can see that's just about empty, that sprue. And what I do with that sprue now is I will, rather than just throwing it out as is, I'll actually cut off bits of it like this. And I'll use the little stick, bit of sprue, as a stirrer in my paint pots. And it's disposable because I was chucking it out anyway. So it's a good way of recycling and using things up. You can see here I've got a box full of sprue pieces that I've cut off that I'll use as stirrers in my paint pots. So I've got my X11 chrome silver there. Got a busy store today, lots going on. So you'll hear lots of background noise. You should come and visit us at the Hobbyman in Narre Warren or Hearns Hobbies in the city in Melbourne. And join in the fun. There's always lots to do and see here, and lots of things to talk about. So I'm just using my little sprue to clean up that. Now, dry brushing, as it states, is using a paintbrush that is almost dry. Almost no paint on it whatsoever. So I am just using a bit of a throwaway brush, a bit of a dead one. So sometimes brushes, they get a little bit ragged at the end. They've been used a fair bit. Doesn't matter. You can get specialized brushes that are specific for dry brushing. They can sometimes be a really good investment if you're doing that kind of thing frequently. Usually they're a little fatter, so you don't typically dry brush with a very thin brush. You dry brush with a fatter brush, and often what you want is a curved surface over the top of the brush rather than one with a point. So I'm just using that one. It's just a really plain regular brush that's a little bit frayed at the end because it's been used a fair bit. I use this one for testing paints in store sometimes. Now I've got just the tiniest little bit of paint there on my pad that I used that was left over off that bit of sprue that I stirred the paint with. And what I want to do is just dip just the tip of the brush. You can see there, just the tip of the brush is got, yes please, a little bit tighter, BJ, that'd be great. You can see I've just got a little bit of paint just on, where are we? I'm just moving that there. So you can just see just the tip of the brush. You can see that against my hand. It's really not very much. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just literally paint that off into the paper. Paint that off into the paper until I'm literally not getting any more paint off that brush. So that brush is technically dry and it looks like it doesn't have any paint on it. Now what I want to do is I want to just flick the tip of the brush over the top of my skull, there like that. And what you notice is all of a sudden, details. There. That's it. Okay, I'm going to move that rock out of the way because it's black. There we are. There we go. And I'm just flicking just the tip of the brush. And even though it looked like the brush had nothing on it, all of a sudden, details start to emerge. And what we're left with is that in focus? That one there? Can you see that all right? Can you move it down a bit? Towards the table, is it? Yeah. There we go. Can you see that on the monitor, guys, in the store? Yeah? So what you get is all of the details are preserved, the recesses remain dark, and the highlights I've done in a beautiful silver. So the theory behind this is as follows. I'm just going to move that out the road for 1 second. A little bit of paper. So if you've got a piece like this that's got an edge, whether it's a regular one or an irregular one, what you're doing is you're brushing your brush, just flicking the tip of your brush in a swaying motion like this across, just hitting those tops. And you're going back and forward, back and forward, back and forward, back and forward. So what you're getting is you're getting a lot of paint here, a lot of paint here, a tiny bit of paint there, and a tiny bit of paint there, and there, and there. And you're getting no paint at all there, and there, and there. What you end up happening is all of these details start coming to the fore, and a lot of these sections that are deeper in recess don't show up at all, or rather they stay dark. So I'm going to keep going with my skull here. I'm going to bring that back over. And as you can see, I really don't need much paint to do this with. So I'm going to brush all that off. And I'm just going to flick that back and forward over the top of my skull. There we go. Just flicking the edge of the brush over that, and you end up with this beautiful little metallic looking skull. This is a great way. This is just literally silver on black, but what you end up with is a piece that really looks like worn metal. Looks almost Terminator-esque, this particular one.
Just hold it at the same level and I'll try and zoom in.
Yep. So you can see how all of a sudden all of the detail on our skull is brought out. I'm going to hold that one there, and I'm going to bring up one that is still primed in black, so you can see the difference. You see how you can see all of those details there? Pretty good. There you go. So, obviously, that is just silver on black. But what you can do if you want to smooth that out even more, I'm going to do another one, but I'm going to do it slightly differently. First of all, I'm going to use this color first, which is metallic gray. It's also a metallic, but it's a darker metallic. It's a darker tone. I'm going to get another sprue piece to stir that with because it's a bit dry. So I'm doing this in 2 layers. I'm doing the darker layer first. Very, very, very lightly. So I'm just getting a little bit of paint on the tip of the brush and then brushing it off completely. So this is going to give a much more subtle effect than the silver did. So we're still getting a lot of those highlights are coming out. Now I want to contrast that. Can I zoom in again, please, PJ? I want to contrast those two. There we go. So that's the one done with the silver is on the right, and the one on the left is the one that's done with the metallic grey. You can see we've got lots of detail out of that, but not quite as much, not quite as deep. Just do a tiny little bit more of the metallic grey. And then what I'm going to do, then is then do a tiny little bit of the silver over the top. So I'm just getting that on the brush, dry brush. So there's nothing coming off the brush onto the paper. And then I'm just hitting that again. Again, just the tip of the brush flicking over the edges, the raised edges of the model. Very patient. There we go. And all of a sudden, we've got even more details come up out of that. But it's come up in such a way that it's a little more blended. Because I've used 2 different shades of paint there, it comes up as a little bit of a smoother kind of effect. So if you have a look at those 2 now, yeah, they're both highlighted really nicely. Oh, there we go. They're both highlighted really nicely, but you see one is a little bit more subtle and the other one is a little bit more in your face. So you can add extra layers as you choose, and you're going to get this kind of effect. So that's something that's metallic. Let's go back to our rock. This is our rock here that I showed you before, that I just painted in, just primed in. You can see that that's the regular rock color, and I primed it in black. Now this is good for basing, for miniatures. It's good for dioramas and that kind of thing, if you want a particular color. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use neutral grey, and this is Model Air, so this is probably a little thinner than I'd like it to be, but it doesn't matter. It's still going to have the same effect. Now, What I would prefer to do on something this size is have a much larger brush. I don't have one on me at the moment, so that's all right, doesn't matter. And this is quite damp paint, this one, because it's quite thin, this paint, because it's meant to be airbrush ready. So it's going to take a little bit more to get it all off the brush. And once again, I'm going to be just flicking it over the surface there. And all of a sudden, my details in my rock are starting to come out.
We'll sort that out when you come down there. We'll sort that out when you come on down. No worries. No worries.
And all of a sudden, our black rock is starting to get some detail. And the very edges of it, there, are really getting the most amount of paint. So they're really getting highlighted. BJ, can I ask how long we've been going, please?
20 minutes.
Okay, that's good. There we go, and there we go. So all of a sudden, our rock, the details, start really coming out. Now, what I want to do is get an even lighter color, say a white. Get a little bit out there, don't need much. Oh, I've got some in there, good. Again, just a little bit on the tip of the brush. Get it all off. And I'm going to go over that again. All of a sudden, we start getting even more detail coming out, but mostly right at the edges.
I have a question.
Yes.
JJ is asking, when painting in general,
Mm-hmm.
should you always prime before you paint?
Now we covered this when we did our first tutorial this afternoon. I'll cover it again now. I would say it depends on what you're trying to achieve. So if it's something that is going to have a lot of handling, I would prime it because that's going to help the paint stick to the model. If it's something with a surface that you're going to have to work on, you're going to have to sand and that kind of thing, or there's tiny little flaws and holes and that kind of thing in it that you need to cover, a primer and can have a filling agent in it that can help with that. And also if you're changing colors rather dramatically, so you're going from a very dark color that of the object that you're painting to a very light colored paint, you might want to prime it in a lighter color first to help draw that out. More important than priming is cleaning the model first, though. I always say that. If you don't clean the model, if the model is oily, if the model's got mold release formulas and chemicals on it, if it's sticky from your hands, then paint's not going to stick to it, neither is primer.
So you went over that in the first tutorial today.
Yes, I did. Yes, indeed. That's what I spoke about then. So go back and have a look. We've got a couple of live things. So now my black rock, as you can see, has got a lot more detail on it. Now that's painted detail, obviously, on a natural object. Now, if you think about it, you can do the same thing with things like if you're painting leather or you want something to look like leather, you can do dark colors on, light colors over a darker color, like a lighter brown over a darker brown to get that natural look. You can also, instead of swiping this way, you can spot it on like that to give it a completely different look. You can also do things like wood, and wood grain goes really well with this kind of technique as well. Okay, I've got a few other things that I'd like to do in metallic. This is a piece from a Gundam model that I've got here. And what I've done is, as you can see, I've actually painted the base coat in brown. The reason I've done that in brown, so far I've showed you greys and whites on black, and I've showed you metallic silvers on black. What about gold? So the paint was in front of me here. I've got some old gold. I hope this works. There we go. So what I've done is I've based this one in brown, and I'm going to use old gold. Let's get that off my brush first. Get the brush nice and dry. This paint for some reason is quite thin, so I'm not sure whether this one's going to work. I might need to go to my other option here. So I'm just going to flick that back and forward there. Yeah, it's working mostly. So it's just the tip of the brush is hitting the model, just the tip, not the whole brush. And I'm using so little paint. It's a very good idea, as is with all painting really. You're building up your layers very carefully, very slowly, very delicately. Not rushing it too much. I mean, I'm rushing a little bit because I'm on camera and got limited time. Now, I'll get a zoom in just a few moments, BJ, not straight away, but shortly. This is wobbling off in my... That old gold is really thin for some reason, that paint. That's all right. So that's my first layer. So that's old gold on brown. I've just done that very, very roughly. So can we zoom in on that for just a moment? There we go. You see how that's the old gold on the brown, and it just brings it right out and gives it that worn look. It's really good. Now, what I'm going to do is go over that again in this one here, which is just a regular gold, I think. It's a much lighter shade. I'll pop the top on that one because it's getting a little old. Actually, let's grab one of my sprues from over here. There we go. So with this gold here, quite dry already, just getting that on my brush, wiping it off the brush. And let's go over some of the detail there again in the lighter gold and see what kind of effect we can get there. So you can see if I did that on black, I'm going to get a different effect than doing it on brown. All right. So just as a contrast, we're going to show that now if we can, please, BJ. Zoom in on that one. And there we've got that beautiful looking gold piece there. Now again, I can keep going with that and really bring out that contrast and with the dry brush. Now as a just to compare, that's what the brown piece would have looked like prior. The piece on the left is just the same color brown as I did before. So it just shows you how you can really pick out the details in an object through dry brushing and get that beautiful metallic look. There we go. Okay, so I've done a couple of things with the dry brush. One more dry brush I want to show you, and this is kind of a reverse dry brush. So what we've done is we've done lighter colors over darker colors. You can actually go the other way as well. So I've got a white skull here. So with the white skull, what I want to do is I want to do yellow and green over white, so that what it ends up looking like, instead of it looking like shadows and that kind of thing, what it ends up looking like is more of a glowing effect in the recesses rather than, you know, the opposite, rather than shadows in the recesses. So what I'm going to try this. This might not come out very well on camera. This is the kind of thing that I tend to take a little bit more time doing generally. And for the purposes of this, I'm not going to spend that level of time on. So apologies. I'm just getting most of that off my brush, most of that yellow. And I'm just going to, I'm going reasonably heavy with the yellow. There we go. Yellow, 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 yellow. So most of that skull ends up looking yellow. Most of that is looking yellow. There is a few little bits and pieces here and there that are the white still. Can we zoom in on that for a moment, please, BJ? All right, so you can see that's, there we go. It's mostly yellow with a few little bits of white. Now, because it's so bright, I don't know how well that shows up on thing, but what I'm gonna do now is I've got fluorescent green. It was the only green I had in the Vallejo handy, so I'm just using that. And that one's quite a thin one as well, so I'm going to get most of that off. And again, I'm just going to go right over just the tip of that one, because I only want the very high portions of that to be the darker green. I think I've got mostly medium on this brush, not so much of the pigment. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I think I've got mostly medium there, not much pigment. Just let me go again. There we go, a bit better. This is probably not the greatest paint for me to be using for this one. I probably would have been going a more of a darker color green, but that's all right.
They pretty much haven't changed. Honestly, we say for better or for worse, they haven't changed.
There we go, and we get that green look. So once again, if we zoom in on that, if we can please, BJ. So that's using the reverse. We've got more of a glowy type thing, more of an alien type look. So really it's up to your creativity. Particularly if you're doing miniatures, this can be a great technique to increase contrast. And you can really get some detail. You can then go in and do more detail brushing over the top of that. There's no problems about doing that at all. Okay, so next I'm going to show you a few washes. I'm just going to use a very basic wash, which is a black wash. Now, what a wash is a fluid that goes over the model, and it goes into the edges and the corners and the recesses and brings out highlights the higher parts by making the shadows deeper and adding contrast. So I'm just using black. What I generally find personally is that over anything that's white or very light colors, you can use grays and browns and that kind of thing in washes. But over any darker colors like reds, blues, browns, grays, metallics, you really need black. Otherwise, you're just not going to see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, this is our rock that I dry brushed earlier. What I'm going to do is just hit that with the thing, and that has gone over it a lot more than I suspected it would. I'm just going to tap that off. And what you end up with is those shadows start getting even darker while the paint remains on the highlight. So you can see the contrast between, we'll zoom in for just a minute. We see the contrast between that part there that I've hit with the wash and that part there that I haven't. And you can see a little bit of contrast. Now what you can do is you can do a dry brush again over the top of that to accentuate those highlights over again. This is probably not the best way of doing this. Now something to keep in mind is there's different washers that have got a different bases. So you get enamel bases and you get sometimes water bases. So oil bases or water bases typically in washers. The benefits of an enamel base or oil base with your washers is that it's got very low surface tension, very high viscosity, so it slides into all of the creases and the crevices and the edges and brings out the detail. So I'll show you, this one isn't, this is the Tamiya one that I'm using at the moment, the panel line accent color. So I'm going to show you, actually I'm going to show you on this dude here with his shield. Do you see that shield there? The white of that shield. What I want to do is I want to highlight the shadows there. So what I'm going to do is just touch in there. Do you see how all of a sudden, actually you might need to zoom in on that one too, BJ. Okay, watch this.
Just focus. That's it?
Yeah. So you see, all I need to do is just touch, and all of a sudden, that's a little bit too much there.
Oh, look, definition.
All of a sudden, that bit that was very blocky and white, it sinks down into those recesses, runs along each panel line, and then, oh, yep, and then all of a sudden, see all that detail that's just popped out of that? Beautiful. Now, I'm going to get a little cotton bud here and just, out of frame, yep. Just make sure that I'm cleaning it off the top there. So all of a sudden, I get so much more detail out of that than what I had before. Now, what I can then do, if I've dirtied that up a little bit more than I'd like and I want it to stay white, I can do another dry brush in white over the top of that if I choose to. That looks pretty good for mine though, I reckon.
Attack of the tongue.
Attack of the tongs. And there's a tiny little shield on, you see that on the shoulder? And you can see that in comparison to my thumb there. Just going to hit that with our little brush here.
Oh, out of frame. That's it.
There we go. And all of a sudden, I've got all of those bits highlighted. Now, I probably shouldn't have used grey, black on this one. Probably a dark grey would have done because it's on white, but that's okay. So that shows how that can work. I'm going to see if there's some panel lines on this. This is a little Super Deformed Gundam that I've done previously. It's actually the same one as I did in that gold. You can see that gold in that front piece there. But what I want to do is I want to show you on this where I've got some straight edges. On this one here, just want to show you how, if I hit that panel line there.
You want to go in?
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure if the camera picked that up, but as soon as I touched there, it scooted all along that panel line there. If I go here.
Bloody magic.
It is. In there.
Magic Mike.
Ha! I wish. And over here, yeah, look at the monitor.
What? It's in
Yeah, you just have to frame.
Oh.
That's it.
There we go.
Yeah.
Whoa.
In here.
That's cool.
It's like it's alive.
It's alive. And then you can use this just to clean up some edges.
We just have a frame.
Oh.
That's it.
There we go.
So that's on a very dark green, so it's not as obvious as I'd perhaps like it to be. It's certainly not as obvious as it was, pardon me, as it was on that black piece, but here we are. What about on that bit of the head there? Can we see that? See that there? Watch this. This will be a really good one to see. You see that?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, too much there. Again, my little cotton bud here is coming in handy just to clean it up before it dries. Shoots along those edges and it just highlights those parts. Why don't I do it here on a bit of the silver part of this, the back of this shoulder? Here we are. You'll see this very.
Oh, wow.
You seen that?
That's cool.
There we go.
How does it do that?
It, yeah, as I said, it's the difference in the surface tension, that kind of thing, just picks out the details. Now, another thing that you can use instead of your panel lining liquid is a pen. Where are we? Here we are. So the most commonly used ones are the Gundam markers. They're like this, and it's basically a little fine liner. Really, really fine tip on that. And I'm going to do this on the other shoulder here. What you do is you just put it in there.
We're going tight.
Is that working? Oh, I hope this hasn't dried out since I've last used it.
It's got a little dry and crusty.
Oh no.
It's carpet.
It's dead. Okay, well, I won't show you that one. What I'll do is I've got a grey one here. And what I will do, I've got a grey one here. I'll use that one. Yeah, that works. Oh, only just. That's nearly dead too. There we go. That's drawing. So I'm going to do that, but I'm going to use it on these. Yep. There we go. On the back of the head there. There we go. That section there. And this is just a grey one. That's why I'm using it on the white. So I'm just using that on the white.
Yep, towards me a little bit. Avoid. That's it. That would probably be better.
Oh, and I've drawn a big line down the middle of there. Now, I've made a big mistake right there in the middle, but you can see how I've highlighted those edges and made it more visible. And so, yeah, the grey works well on the white. So there's a couple of different ways of doing panel lining. Let's have a look at our Spitfire that we were working on earlier and the wing underneath. Remember that bit there that we were looking at here, where we did the pre-shading on? Well, what I'm going to go ahead and do is, yep, that's fine, that's fine. I'm going to use, yeah, can we zoom out actually, please, BJ? So again, this is on the panel lines on the Spitfire. Now watch these. You see that? Can you see that on the camera?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just coming through.
Yeah. I'm trying to find a bit that's going to be conducive to it. Oh, there we go. A little bit too much. And all of a sudden, our panel lines that were fairly subtle become even less so and even more visible than they were before. You can see there we've got some panel lines that have now been highlighted. This is a very, very, pardon me, small model to be doing this on. And a lot of people, sorry, I got something stuck in my throat. A little bit of lunch stuck in my throat. Pardon me. So, where's my assistant gone? My water bottle? I need my water bottle. It was just over there somewhere. Sorry. I don't know. Anyway, on larger scale models than this, what you find is it's easier to access those panel lines and easier to do the panel lining on. Another thing to keep in mind is that the panel lining fluid and the panel lining markers work better on a glossy surface. This is actually a matte paint. So that paint is slightly when you look at it at a microscopic level, it's a little bit on the bumpy side, which means that those really nice, fine, straight panel lines are going to be less so. So you just leave it there, it's fine. It's not going to work in exactly the same way as, it's not going to be quite as effective. It's going to want to spread over the surface of the thing like it has here, rather than going in those lines. So what a lot of modelers will do when they've got it at this stage and they've done their base coats is that they will gloss coat it and then do the panel lining and then do the matte coat over the top of that, particularly with military models. So there you go. There is some examples of washes and dry brushing. And again, as I said, that's to accentuate the shadows in the recesses, but also the shadows in the recesses, but also the highlights on the tips and that kind of thing. So I hope that you have found that effective and useful. If there's any comments or questions, please shoot it at us. If we see them at a later date after this is finished,
Oh, Mike, you're a bloody magician.
we can address. Oh, well, that's what they say. That's what they tell me. Yeah. So we are going to now take another little break, a little short break, and we'll be coming back with the last of our session. We're going to look at a couple of weathering techniques. Oh, there we go, I'm on the camera. We're going to look at a couple of weathering techniques, and we're also going to look at decals, applying some decals.
I have one quick question.
Oh, we've got a question before we go. Yes, BJ, what's the question?
Do you clear coat first? So
That-
you're talking about the flat.
Yeah,
surface
yeah.
of the-
Some people do. I've seen modelers not clear coat first. So the idea is that the washers particularly will run a lot smoother and a lot cleaner over a gloss coat than what they will over a matte coat. So if something is, you want it to look matte in the end, what you might do is clear coat it first with a gloss clear, then do your panel lining, then do a matte clear over the top of that. So multiple levels of clear is very thin when you're applying the paint anyway. So those you still get the benefit of the panel lining while getting that really nice clean look, and you get that matte surface over the top of it. So a lot of modelers swear by it. I've actually seen some people who don't mind that more messy look. As I said, as I showed with that one there, it did go over the model a little bit more than just the panel lines when I did that wing. So not perfect, not ideal by a lot of people's standards, but it can sometimes do the same job as what our pre-shading did that we looked at earlier on in our earlier tutorial. So yes, some people clear coat, some don't. Really, you need to find your own way on that. I would probably err in the direction of clear coating in a gloss to do your panel lining if you're not sure. I hope that answered the question okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
No worries. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back for the last of today's tutorials. We're going to look at a few weathering techniques and also a couple of decal application. So hopefully that goes all right. I practiced a little bit with my decals earlier this week. I hope that goes well. All right, no worries. We'll see you very soon.